Hi, welcome to Focaccia bread. I've been getting a lot of requests to do some bread recipes, and I really would have rather done them on the boat, but it's okay. We can make it happen here. I bake bread here four times a week, so obviously it can happen. Today I want to do focaccia, and I've only honestly been baking bread for about 3 years. So some of the things maybe I don't feel confident enough in myself yet, and I think we're all kind of like that. When other people have more confidence in us than we have in ourselves. But focaccia, I feel really confident about. Focaccia, I make a lot. It's one of my favorites. It's really super easy. When I make focaccia, I make a big loaf and maybe freeze half of it, because it's in your freezer. You have breadcrumbs, you have croutons, you have crackers, you have focaccia bread. So I like to make a big loaf when I'm making, and it's just usually Billy and I, and just freeze half. So you want some warm water. Now you want this to kind of be like a warm bath water if you kind of put your finger in it. If you can take its temperature, you want between 100 and 118. You really don't want to go over 120 degrees, because that's going to kill your yeast. I am at 112 here, so that's perfect. So into my water, I'm going to do a tablespoon of honey. You can also do a tablespoon of sugar, but your yeast needs this sugar to feed on. So you got to give it something sweet in there. Now I'm going to do 1 packet of yeast, and I really like the Red Star. The Red Star is what I always buy, and that's my favorite yeast. And I'm having a hard time finding it here in Boulder, so that's what we're using. And then we just want to give this a quick stir. We're going to set this aside for 5 to 10 minutes and let that yeast kind of start doing its thing. Now, there are a lot of recipes that call you just put everything together and do it. I kind of like to do this because I don't want to waste all that flour if for some reason that package of yeast didn't activate. So this, I think, is a great little step to do for that. Now next comes the flour, and I like to weigh my flour. You can't really get a really perfect, true measurement by not weighing it, but you can do it if you don't have a scale. So what I want is 4 cups or 500 grams of flour. Now the thing about your flour is you can't just scoop in here and be like, that's a cup. That weighs a lot. It's amazing. Because flour settles, it settles at the store, it settles in your shelf. So you really kind of got to get it kind of fluffed up. So I like to do 1 cup and just sprinkle it over lightly until it is mounded up, back of a knife, and scoop. And that's my 1 cup. And I'm going to do that till I have 4 cups of flour. And to this, I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and I'm going to give that a whisk. Now, my Danish dough hook that I have on the boat, I really love. It's a nicer one than this. I actually just kind of found this one at the thrift store here, so I picked it up. And it's okay. It's doing the job. But I do like a Danish dough hook here. If you don't have a Danish dough hook, just use a wooden spoon. Now you can see here how that is foaming up and bubbling up. So it's already doing its job. I found that being here in Denver, it's so dry that some things I have to add a little more moisture to than otherwise would. Now I can obviously see this has active, this yeast is good, so I'm not even going to wait the whole 10 minutes. But to that, I'm going to add a tablespoon of extra virgin olive oil. Yeah, I'm just eyeballing it. You do these things enough, you can just eyeball them. And give that a stir, and then into our flour. And what I want to do here is just incorporate this until it's incorporated and there is no more flour. Now again, things are always going to be different, right? Because it's going to depend on the humidity in the air and all kinds of things. So you might find that it's too dry and you need to add a little more water, or you might find that it's too wet and you add need to add a little more flour. But for the most part, a focaccia bread is a really super hydrated dough. It's always going to be kind of sticky and wet. So this is looking maybe a little dry for me. I'm going to go ahead and put my hands in there and see how I can fill it and see if I think it needs just a little more water. And so seeing how it's not sticking, I want it to stick. So in this kind of bread, I want it to be able to stick to me. So I'm going to add just a little more water and then get that mixed up. And now this is feeling better. So this feels much more sticky and wet, and that's really what you want. So you don't have to deal with this for a long time. You just want to make sure everything's incorporated. And then I'm simply going to put a flour sack towel over it. Put it in the warmest spot you have in the house. For me on the boat, that's always in the pilot house because of the windows. But put it wherever's warm. I'm making some pot roast in a crock pot today. So I know that little corner over there, because of that crock pot on, is going to be warm. 15 minutes. Now after that 15 minutes, we're going to start stretching our dough. And the thing with the focaccia bread, as opposed to some of those where you would need them for a long time, you develop your gluten in your focaccia by folding and stretching it. So I've got some cold water here, and I'm just going to pick up and let it stretch. Roll it, pick it up, let it stretch, fold it, and I'm just going to continue to work my way around the dough 5 or 6 times. And just let that pull and stretch. Then I'm going to turn it over, put that side down, cover it, and then we're going to do that 3 more times every 15 minutes. So set your timer for 15 minutes. Fold number 2, and you can see how much more elastic it's already got. And this lift up, lay down, lift up, lay down, all the way around, and then flip it over, put that part down on the bottom, another 15 minutes. So if you're new here and you haven't seen my video on choosing flour, the most important thing to do in choosing your flour is that you choose an unbleached flour. That is the utmost importance. Now for me, all of my flours, I always use King Arthur. I couldn't find the bread flour here, so I went with the Bob's, and it is unbleached. So when you're making your bread, really you want a bread flour because it has a higher gluten in it. So bread flours are usually about 12.7% gluten because you want that higher gluten because that's what gives you that elasticity and that chewy texture, unlike a cake flour that's usually about 7%, and that gives you that light, airy, crumbly kind of texture. So for your bread, you want to go the other way. Now, the good thing about the King Arthur is although their breads are a little higher in gluten content, their flours, than most other flours. So if you can only use the all-purpose, this is a good one because it's already 11.7%. So it already has a high gluten ratio to it. So choose wisely when you're choosing your flours. If you don't have bread flour, all-purpose will work. Just make sure it's unbleached. Isn't it looking pretty? So I'm getting ready to do our fold for the 3rd time. And on the 4th time, I'm going to put it out into its pan. So while I'm waiting my 15 minutes for my 4th one, we're going to get our pan ready. Now, on the boat, I have my beautiful 9x13 cast iron casserole dish that is so versatile that I use for so many things and I love. And that's what I make my focaccia in. And it's just perfect, and it really gives you that crispy crust on the bottom, It's so amazing. I don't have that here. So let me show you what I do have. All right, let's do one more little fold there. Nice stretch. Flip it over. 15 more minutes, and that'll be our final stretch and fold. So what I did was I took to the thrift stores, and this is a really nice pan. It's a perfect size. I haven't gotten brave enough to do it yet without the parchment paper because I just don't know if it's going to stick. I don't know the pan. So to be safe, I'm going to do parchment in the bottom. I would hate to go through all that work and then your bread stick, you know. So maybe one day while I'm here I'll get brave enough to, but until then it's the parchment paper. So, and then to the bottom of that, I'm going to do a good 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And then this is ready for us after our final fold. Fourth and final stretch and fold. A little cold water on my hands. Now this time at the end we're going into our pan. You can tell how it's already growing and how strong it has gotten. So into our pan that's ready, and I'm going to do it bottom side down because then I want to flip it. And then you want to stretch this till it gets to all the corners. And you can see it's going to get tough on you. Sometimes they cooperate, sometimes they get tough on you. So if it's getting tough and it's pulling back, you can see I push it out, it pulls right back. Cover it, let it sit, let that relax for about 10 minutes and then come back and push it to the corners. So I've let it rest for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to push it into its corners and you can see it's behaving better. Now, once you go into your pan, you want another hour of time to rise. So I'm going to subtract that 10 minutes. And you can see these air bubbles, see these bubbles? Can you see the bubbles? So beautiful. So I'm going to go 50 minutes, and then we'll come back and get her ready to go in the oven. Now, while I'm waiting on my focaccia to finish rising, I'm going to get my topping ready. And in here, I have 2 tablespoons of water. I'm going to do a teaspoon and a half, 2 teaspoons of fresh rosemary. Now, there are so many ways that you can go. You can go just simple olive oil and salt. You can do Parmesan cheese. You can do tomatoes. You can do so many different options. This is just what I've chosen for today. So I'm going to add my rosemary to there. And to that, I've finely minced 2 cloves of garlic. And then I'm going to use my sea salt here just because it's going to dissolve better. And I'm going to do a half a teaspoon of my sea salt. And I want to give that a mix. And I just kind of want to mix this till I know that salt is pretty dissolved. So now I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. And then I'm going to set this aside, and it'll be ready for us right before we go into the oven. Let's just see. Oh, look how tall it's gotten. So you really want it to double in size, which we have done here. And then I'm going to get some cold water on my fingers and start making those dimples. And just start from the front, go all the way down till you touch the bottom of the pan, all the way across. Just like that. Pretty. And then we have our mixture that we made. Now I've got my oven on 425 degrees. And I've got it preheated. I'm going to give this a quick whisk. And then I'm just going to pour this all over. And then now I like to go back and just kind of take my hand and make sure this is spread all over. Just kind of do your dimples again and just kind of make sure everything has some of that goodness on it. Now, if you want, you could top this with like some nice flaky sea salt for a salty crunch, or some kosher salt. I'm just gonna sprinkle a little kosher salt just for that salty top. 425 degrees, 25 minutes. Isn't it beautiful? All right, here we go. And here we are in all its glory. Now, want to set this on a rack to cool for 10 minutes before you take it out of the pan. When your 10 minutes are up, then you can take it out of the pan, but leave it on the rack to finish cooling. Now, I will say, I do like it better when I do it in the cast iron, just because I think the bottom and the sides get much crispier, but it's still delicious. And, you know, you can wait for it to cool completely, or you can sneak a bite of it nice and warm. This is so delicious. I hope you make it. If you make it, please let me know how it turned out and what you think and what you topped yours with. I can't wait to hear. Send me a picture. It's so delicious. Bye, y'all. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all later.